to another episode of Your Right Power Session. I'm your host, Darian Bryant.
And I'm Stephanie Bradley Blue. How you guys doing tonight?
Today, we're going to talk about suicide prevention. What do you normally see? What do you hear from the parents?
Okay. Well, I mean, we usually assess, and I'm excited to be talking about suicide prevention because last month was actually Suicide Prevention Month. So as we close out of September, we really wanted to touch bases with it again, just to kind of remind people because of the time of year. But what we usually look for and talk to people about are risk factors for people, protective factors with people, and warning signs. And so risk factors can oftentimes come when you have a mental health issue. Oftentimes, the majority or the most foremost mental health issue that results in suicide or attempts or ideologies is depression. And substance abuse, bipolar disorder, and more acute disorders also follow suit. But, you know, for the most part, the world, like most people have experienced depression in some form of another or another. Serious loss, grief, all those kinds of things can connect you and put you in a depressive state. And many people have never even had a thought of suicide at the time, you know, when it becomes prevalent like that, and just entering into depression can definitely be a catalyst or a risk factor for suicidal thoughts and committing suicide. Some people have those thoughts as well when they are diagnosed with serious health issues, conditions, severe pain, and people who have traumatic brain injuries. Those are your major symptoms or of risk factors that you know we kind of cover and talk about and discuss. And then of course there are environmental risk factors, prolonged stress, anytime you're under stress for long periods of time, back-to-back events, stressful life events, circumstances, rejection, divorce. One major event can be the catalyst for somebody to move into a place of depression that will cause them to want to hurt or harm themselves. And if you have a history of it, if it's a history in your family, if you've had a history where you've had multiple attempts or thoughts about it, or childhood abuse or neglect or trauma, that's also another major risk factor. So the risk factors cover your personal history, your environment, and your mental health.
People also need to realize if they attempted suicide, that next year is very critical.
We talked about mental fortitude a couple of weeks ago, and I think, you know, we're all vulnerable.
Yes.
You don't know what those things will be, like what your breaking points will be. You're a strong, wonderfully strong person, as long as the environmental things happening in your life or the things that are happening to you are things that you can pretty much cope with or deal with. But when those coping skills are not healthy, or you're bombarded with life events, because life just happens, right? We can't always gauge what's going to happen with life events. That can push anyone to the edge, right? I think most people in times of distress have had thoughts like, I just wish this day was over. I wish like tomorrow I could just not wake up. Like, and like even in jest.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why they say, you know, if you pretty much, if you have weapons at all, you should lock them up. But guns is huge. Lock all guns up. But if you definitely know that you have something going on, or there's a loved one in the house having something going on with them, that you're supposed to definitely take that away. Some states are a little bit worse than others too. I remember seeing that Wyoming is like the #1 state suicide. So I think also knowing that, as well as what happens in your family
and geographic space and all that kind of stuff, all those things play into that, right? So
environment. Right. It's
social stuff, isolation, all that kind of stuff. So, you know, it doesn't surprise me because where people are more spread out, especially when we talk about the Midwest, people are more spread out. They're not always, their socialization is very different than somebody who lives in New York City, right? Who lives in Wyoming, socializes very different than someone who lives in New York City. So, and so they may not always have the protective factors around them that someone else would have, or access to the protective factors that someone else would have, who lives in a hustle bustle city, who's prepared in different ways, whose emergency response teams will come quickly. If you live out on a farm somewhere in Wyoming and you're having a problem and something is going on, you know, it may take somebody 20 minutes to get to you, or a half hour, you know what I mean?
Right.
The more rural areas or whatever. So those kinds of things have a lot to do with it. Demographics, geographics, socialization, all those things are things that are discussed, like when you talk about protective factors with any person. So you have access to mental health care is a protective factor. Feeling connected to your family and your community and having a support system is a protective factor. Problem solving and coping skills is a protective factor. Limited access to any lethal means, like you were talking about with weapons, that's a protective factor. So if you know you have a child who's been diagnosed with a mental health disorder, or if you have had issues in the past, or you are going through something really, really devastating in your family, and someone has uttered an idea of not waking up or harming themselves, and you own weapons, you need to secure those weapons and or remove them from your home. I think that those are things that oftentimes we don't discuss. And as working in the acute care services, we used to ask people all the time, like we have to ask the question, do you have weapons? And people would get offended sometimes. We're like, look, the bottom line is you're here because you've had these thoughts, and we want to help protect you. We've had to have people come and confiscate their weapons, make sure that their weapons were locked up. So those things are really, really important. And then cultural and religious beliefs, things that protect you, ground you, that you are encouraged by. And that are repetitious parts or consistent parts of your life. Those are all protective factors when it comes down to guarding yourself and shielding yourself against wanting to take your own life. I think.
It's definitely about having a strong foundation, that inner core, strong foundation, and the means, and knowing who can you call when you feel on yourself dwindling down, because a lot of people don't reach out, and before you know it, it could be too late. They do start to lean on the drugs, the alcohol, isolating themselves.
And I challenge people to think about it this way too. In the idea that, because we always say, someone shoots themselves, hangs themselves, takes a bunch of pills, and we think about all of those things as your ordinary way, or your ways in which people would commit suicide. But we also think that those thoughts don't come from anywhere, and they're not born in a vacuum. If you've been confronted multiple times, and you got a bad liver, and you still drinking every day, my question to you is, do you really want to live? Right?
Exactly.
You're not holding the gun to your head literally in that moment and blowing your brains out, but the choices and decisions we make when we know we're in certain states of mind, right? Consciously and purposefully, we have to ask ourselves, are we trying to harm ourselves, right?
Right.
Are we intentionally trying to harm ourselves? And it's just a slow death, but still, the bottom line is that in thought is to no longer be here, right? So even though slow, that thought process, we have to be careful, because anybody can fall into it. It's simple.
Exactly. And see, this is not for just people who have thoughts of suicide. This is for people out there, one, think they will never do it. But two, also, you never know what you might see, and you ignore all of these things, and then all of a sudden someone say to you, well, oh, wow, they were doing that. Oh my God, so I could have saved it. You can be there as a hero too, all right, and save them from doing something that's going to destroy everyone. You feel me?
Go ahead. That's a great segue into behaviors that people put out.
Yes.
So what are some of the behaviors? You said increased drug use. What are some of the other behaviors that you
changing normal routines, having a self-destructive attitude, lashing out, always being argumentative, and then you see them later on, wow, did you know such and such committed suicide? So a year ago when she was doing this, or 6 months ago, or 2 weeks ago, or 5 days ago, those were signs.
Yeah, and I think you said something really important. I just kind of want to piggyback and drive home. The extreme differences in people's moods are really important to pay attention to. If they are suffering from extreme humiliation or shame, and they're extremely fatigued, and they're normally a happy-go-lucky individual, we need to start to ask questions. Or the person that's pretty low-key, but all of a sudden becomes extremely relieved or suddenly is improving and life is great, and that opposite extreme too is another reason too where another sign is you may want to check in with that person and find out what's going on with the extreme shifts in their mood. I think that those are important aspects to discuss. Like, go ahead.
No, I'm about to say, and just somebody just randomly coming out talking about suicide. Because some people are just blunt with it. When I was in the military, and I was teaching suicide prevention class one time, and it was time for break. I was standing by a soldier, and that soldier looked at me and said, "Well, you know what, son, Bryant?" I said, "What's up?" He was like, "I'm just mad I woke up today." And I said, "What you mean by that, man?" And he said, "Well, I took all these pills, and I'm mad I woke up." Hey, took him straight to the emergency room, whatever. But that was his first attempt. And he really still got up, came to work, still went through that quick training class. And then if he didn't say that to me right there in the hallway, who knows what would have happened.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Who else did he say that to?
So I think people need to be very, very well aware of their options and how to manage that. If there's a friend or someone, you can always call the crisis hotline, 911, of course.
Yes.
And if you explain to the 911 officers, I know in this particular area, they'll bring oftentimes a CIT officer, someone who's versed in mental health issues, and that person will be able to help you assess whether or not that person needs to go to the hospital immediately.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we don't, and I just want to speak to this too. If someone comes to you and they said they're suicidal, at that moment, you can't be concerned about your friendship. You can't be concerned.
No, all that go out the window, bro. He or she will be mad, will be mad, but later on they will love you for it. I promise you.
Right.
I promise you. All that go out the window.
Right.
All that go out the window.
Right. Because in that moment they're not in their faculties are not all together. They're not in their right mind. So you need somebody to support them in getting to a place where they can make healthier decisions. And you may be that only person in that only moment. So that's not the time to be worried about whether or not that person's going to hate you or not be your friend again. That's not the time to do that. I would suggest on every count to call 911. They now have a new 988 number.
Yeah, National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. Make sure y'all call that. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yep, and the 988 number is the new mental health number for emergencies. Where you can call them, and if the person is in crisis and you describe to that person, whether you have that person call or you make the call for them or make the call because you're in the situation with a friend or family member, they will guide you through the process, do an immediate assessment, and then find resources for you in the area and kind of guide you through to what to do. Also, like I said, 911, if it's emergent, you walk in and you find a friend and they're taking pills or something is going on and it's off. Your safety is important. Their safety is important. In those moments, I would definitely call 911, let them know what kind of emergency that it is. They will also send out a mental health officer out oftentimes in this area, they will. And then there are also programs to support mobile crisis, mental health skill building classes. Services in this area have mobile crisis units where they'll send somebody else out immediately and assess for you or assess with you. Usually they send out 2 people at a time and they will support you, the caller, and give you resources and opportunities and would let you know what next steps would be. So there are a few things in place, and I'm grateful to say that in this particular area, that mental health, although in all areas, there needs to be some more improvement and some more information given. There are a lot of options for resources in this area.
The U.S. is in the top 20 for suicides. All right, top 20% or 30%. So with that said, I think Barbados has the least suicides in that country. Social media has come involved.
Culturally, there's been some shifts in the demographics of suicidality, largely because, stress is stress.
Yes.
People are starting to realize that they're not as resilient as they think they are. Definitely crossing, all the lines that we thought that they didn't cross before. So it's happening. The world is, in a hopeless place. I think sometimes people, hopelessness is the deepest, I think, feeling and emotion that goes along with.
Yeah, I think it's like the number one or two. Feeling hopeless, feeling there's no way out. Feeling like you have nothing else to believe in. So definitely, and with the parents, we have to start believing that he or she, our kids, are just doing this for attention. Or you're not taking it serious enough, because there's a lot of kids out here who were showing signs, or even said it, and the parent didn't do nothing or didn't want to do anything, or I don't, or some parents even feel embarrassed about certain things, whatever, I get off that. Go get the child some help.
Especially since, like you said, COVID really isolated children.
Yes, it did.
Very social and involved in sports and had that networking life kind of going on, and then to be suddenly shoved into isolation, have those things end abruptly. It's difficult, and sometimes people see the impact of those things on our children, on generations of children.
Yes.
Until we start to see, the violence that we're seeing now kind of rear its ugly head. And then often, and then the other part about like youth suicide is it tends to happen in like clusters. So as relevant as it is to be aware of your own family history, one of the things about youth suicide, especially in schools, is it tends to happen in clusters. And for some reason, there's this nuance around it that makes it appealing to other young people as the option or the or the thing.
Yeah, I remember they had that suicide crew. I forgot what city or state it was. Pack, and some people went in the woods and actually took their lives. So yes, it definitely happens with group. It's just we have a lot of mental health issues going on in this country. Yes. Like we said, you could be as strong as you can be, but someday something might get through. So that's the reason why we say build your mental toughness up. Try your best to be as resilient as possible, because at any given time, these things can happen. Something can sneak in.
And I want to encourage people, just full transparency, when it hits close to home, even for me, someone who, as a professional, I know how to do it all day for other people, but it hit close to home for me just this week. A dear friend of mine, and having to call and have that person evaluated and assessed. I literally froze in the moment and had to call another colleague of mine and say, I need to know what to do next. So please don't think that anyone always knows what to do.
Exactly.
I did with strangers.
Exactly.
At home, and it was my, it was personal. Somebody personal to me. I think I was so taken aback by the fact that it was who it was, even, right? And having to be the person to navigate through that process. I've done it 1,000 times with clients.
Yeah, exactly. But now it's on your table. Yeah, but now it's on your table. Yeah, and
I had to call a friend. I did. I had to phone a friend and be like, "Hey, I need you to talk me through this." Like, and I had the same thoughts to any everyday person we had. We've been friends for many, 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 many years, and I'm thinking he's gonna hate me. All those things crossed my mind, right? But it didn't stop me from doing what I need to do, because I knew what the ultimate, goal was.
To save a life.
And still in it. You know what I mean? And we went home. I talked to some family members, and and they are having the same problem with a very close family member, woman. And I'm like, you don't expect, right? There are things, there's always a straw. That old saying, the straw that breaks the camel's back. You never know what that straw is going to be.
You never knew. You never do. You never do. You never do. So and I'll say this: stop saying what you're never gonna do. There's a lot of people that said they will never stop drinking, but you drank again. There's another person saying, there's people watching right now that said you will never deal with some certain individual, this man or this woman, but guess what? You went back and dealt with them. Stop saying that word never. You never know what you never know what you're never gonna do. Okay. So at the end of the day, put put all of these things that we're talking about into place, so just in case anything happens, you know what to do. When it's in the world of talking to anyone out there, not even the kids, but let them know that, you know, when you approaching them, because some people say, I didn't know what to say. Just say that I'm here for you, and I care about you, and I'm trying to get you some help, you know, because they're gonna get mad at you, like you said, for calling someone.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? They're gonna get mad at you for calling someone, but sometimes those words of calm are good.
Yeah,
You know, approach is everything.
it is. Approach is everything, and sometimes the approach is not going to be the best, and it's not,
Yeah.
especially when, you know, someone who's dealing with mental health issues or something that's, you know, they've kind of broken in the moment. Um, no one ever anticipates those moments in their lives, right? You're never like sitting around going, I'm going to do that next week.
Yeah.
Well, this is the incident I'm going to run into, and I'm going to have to be able to have the answers for it.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, these are things that kind of happen and they're emergent. I just want to encourage you, as our listeners and those who are struggling, to connect. If you know you're feeling some kind of way, if you know that life right now, I was just talking to somebody today, and one of the things that we say that I think is the most untrue, and you can take this from a divinity student.
Right.
One thing they say to me, God won't put more on you than he can bear. You can bear. Yes, that's not in the scripture. That's not biblical, and that's not theological. It's nowhere stated. We are not, you know, there comes a time when it's too much. Where in our lives, sometimes it can be too much.
Yeah.
Not the too much that's the problem. It's knowing how to go and ask for help, and knowing how to, you know, to disseminate that pain, that pressure, into places where it can be shared and supported. And there's always a way of escape, but you have to be willing, right, to take help. You have to be willing to listen to someone. You have to be willing to be, even if you don't understand it in the moment for yourself, if 5 people come and tell you the same thing, then maybe you can address this.
Yeah, exactly. And to carry off what you just said, the devil got tricks too. You know what I'm saying? So the same way they say, you know, God won't put me more than you can bear. Hey, the devil got his way of sneaking in sometimes too. So you got to have all these things in place so you can make sure on the end of this that you do remain standing. Sending them angels along for a reason. I'm still dealing with the pain of losing someone close and dear to me years ago. And I was just 20 years old, I believe, 21 at the oldest. That was really messed up to get that phone call. So believe me, you leave away a path of destruction. You leave behind a path of destruction. 2, people who contemplate suicide, they think they're doing you justice. They think that they're bringing their stress on you, their weight bearing, making your life miserable, things of that nature. And by taking them out of the situation, it's better for you. So that's their mindset sometimes.
Often.
All right. Yeah. We need to intervene, because we think that, yo, that's very selfish of you. Why would you do that? But they think they're doing you a service. A favor, a service. That's what they think. That's what the mind of a suicidal person thinks. The world will be better without me. You got that person right now who's going through cancer, you know, and they don't know that they might make it. And on the other side is going to be great days, but they don't want to put you through that. So they automatically thinking, I'm being a burden on them. I don't want them having to do this behind me, do that behind me. You know what? Whatever, I'm out of here. And they do something, you know, but that's their mindset. All right. And it's not a good one. It's not a good one. So we have to remember on why they think the way they think. A way for that is, I need everyone not only get their mental toughness up, mental strength up, things of that nature, but also be aware of what we're saying to do, just in case, so you can see the signs and notice the things that's going on around you, and don't be so zoned into our own life that we don't notice something, because we could save lives if we pay attention.
Yeah.
You know?
I guess the last thought I would leave tonight is the idea that one of the things that we understand about health in our bodies is that, you know, the more that we take care of it, we exercise, we do what we need to do with it, or it can withstand, you know, in case that illness comes or that sickness comes or that thing comes along, the more we've taken care of our bodies, the more our bodies are prepared to fend against it. What I don't think people often think about is emotional fortitude, and you have to be able to manage and deal with your emotions. And I think emotional strength, those things are guarded by the protective factors that I listed earlier. So stay connected, find support groups. If you don't want to talk to an individual therapist, find what your interests are, connect to support groups, connect to people, connect to churches, to ministries, to mosques, get connected with, if health and wellness is your thing, get connected and stay a part of a group at a gym, but do something that allows you to continue to build emotionally and be fortified emotionally, because life happens.
Definitely.
Happens. And there is no, I mean, honey, life has been happening all week for me. So I want you to know.
It don't, right, right.
It doesn't stop happening because this bad thing is happening over here doesn't mean that life won't send you another blow. Like it's not what it is. Life happens.
Yeah, and, it does.
You know, and you never know how it's going to happen to you. So you have to fortify yourself physically, spiritually, and emotionally to be prepared for it, so that you can confront it in the most healthy way possible.
Facts. I agree with you. Everything you just stay positive. Staying positive doesn't mean that you're gonna it doesn't mean that you're always going to be happy all the time. It means that even on your hardest days, you know that there are better ones coming. You know, so keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. You know, as always, it's about the community.
It's always about the community.
It's about the community.
And I believe my brother was going to put up the suicide prevention hotline number, and
definitely.
And all the information that we shared tonight is accessible on anywhere, pretty much, if you Google or if you look it up. But please remember 988-911, and he'll put up the suicide prevention number for you. You guys be well.
Peace. Blessings. We love y'all.